Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to the April 2017 Q&A. We got lots of questions to go through today, but I want to mention one thing about my filming location and what's behind me. So I've got a Matrix Armory wall behind me. You may have seen Ian's video about the Matrix Armory wall. He had a lot more real estate, a lot more rifles to display than I do. However, this turned out pretty slick. It's a pretty small area, geographically speaking, in terms of how much room there is there. However, you can see you can densely pack a lot of stuff on there and make it look pretty cool. So from the top down, I've got 1860 to 1876 demonstrated. We've got a 61 Springfield musket at the top. We've got a Henry 1860. We've got an 1866 Winchester, ultimately culminating in the 1876, which we've been talking about lately, chambered in 4560 as an intermediate cartridge. More to come on that. Some Old West pistols in the middle, and from the bottom up, I've got World War I Kar 98 AZ Mauser. I've got a 1933 Banner Mauser, and then I've got a 1944 BCD configured in the ZF-41 sniper roll. So pretty cool display, makes this area look a lot cooler, and I wanted to film from here for this Q&A to kind of demonstrate that, and hopefully this filming location is another one for future videos as well. Let's go ahead and get going with the Q&A right off the bat. So, very first question, and we got this from, 5 people, and we see this in the comments a lot. Jonathon H, Samuel O, Matthew J, Eric H. What's the status on the long-range precision rifle series of videos? Well, the status is it's dead. We did a couple videos, we did some ammo tests, we discussed the rifle and the optic, and then it died right there. The reality is Forgotten Weapons is taking off like such a rocket. Ian is traveling constantly, and our ability to dedicate the amount of time that's required to do an actual and legitimate long-range rifle series of videos, along with the training and dedication that needs to be there to do it, just quite honestly isn't there. He's not available enough, and not being available enough means you can't really put the time and effort you need into long-range precision shooting. So at this moment, I don't know if dead's the word, but it's definitely on a hiatus, and we're not going to see more of it for a long time. I'm sorry, it is what it is. However, we're diversifying into some other content. Of course, the What Would Stoner Do project is going to be big for 2017, and the what if lever gun question about alternative history and the U.S. Army is going to be huge as well. So there's a lot to come. Just the long-range precision rifle thing is at least on hiatus. Sorry. High power and heavier rounds from Zakary W. Hi Karl, I was wondering about your experience shooting high power, and after reading the rule sets, I wanted to know why you chose a super weighted AR-15 rather than say an M1A. By my understanding, the rules favor heavier rounds that have better terminal ballistics, if I recall correctly. 5.56 hits in its own shockwave before 7.62. I'm not sure what that means. So what about the AR-15 lent itself better to your skill set than firearms chambered in a more powerful cartridge? Well, you're talking about specifically high power shooting, competitive shooting, the across the course, 600 yards and in. The AR-15 dominates that sport by a large margin. When the AR-15 started coming onto the field of play in that environment, everyone was kind of grognardish about it. They're like, no, I'm sticking with my M14, my M1A. And you are hard-pressed to find anyone shooting anything 30 caliber on the service rifle course of fire anymore. There'll be an occasional M1 Garand, there'll be a couple M1As. The reality is AR-15's the rifle. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. The rifle recoils very little. It has very minimal sight offset or sight disruption during the rapid fire strings. The balance of the gun is extremely excellent. When you're shooting offhand, that balance matters. The reality is the trigger's better, and it doesn't shoot itself loose. An M1A, even when accurized, is only accurate for as long until it shoots itself loose, and that's a real common problem. What it boils down to is it's just plain easier to shoot 5.56 accurately for an extended period of time. Simply put, lack of recoil, good sights, good balance. When you weight the gun down, it means that it doesn't move at all during the rapid fire strings. And actually, in offhand, the weight actually kind of just buckles down and it settles in, and it doesn't move when you're firing either. So as long as you're using bone support instead of muscular support, which is what you should be doing when you're shooting offhand, that extra weight helps settle the gun down, and it's just plain easier to shoot. The advent of 75 and 77 grain and 69 grain ammunition for that as well, I should say projectiles, changed the game even more so. So where the AR used to start falling off was when you get to the longer distances, the 500 and 600 yard course of fire. And the reality is now that you're shooting 69s or better even 77s or even 80 grain bullets, it shoots right up there with any 168 grain 30 caliber round at that distance. Remember, we're punching paper. We're not worried about terminal ballistics. We're worried about accuracy, precision, and scores there. And the 77s and 80 grain bullets do it just as well as, if not better than the 30 cals, with less sight disruption in a rifle that's easier to accurize and retain accuracy and keep accuracy over time. So reality is, you're not going to see 30 cal guns at service rifle high power much longer, except for a few holdouts, and they are doing it at their own loss, quite honestly. Some of them shoot really well. I'm not saying you can't shoot a 30 caliber gun really well, but they are struggling, or they are fighting against their gear in terms of their scores. If they were to pick up an AR, and if they were doing great scores with their 30 cal gun and then picked up an AR, they would have even better scores. I absolutely guarantee it. Logistical stuff. These are a bunch of questions about logistical stuff around InRange. Jared W. Are you guys located in the same area as gun websites? It sounds like you guys are at least in the same state. After the recent events, would you think about running your channel on their platform as well? Love your work. Thank you. This morning's What Would Stoner Do was awesome. Thanks. Yeah, actually we are. We are located in the exact same location. He's in Tucson just like we are, or at least close to Tucson. We know him, and I was on his podcast recently. I don't know a lot about his website in particular. I don't know that it actually streams video content, does it? I guess I'd have to ask him. When we started looking for diversifying our content distribution methods, we quite honestly looked for big names and big websites that could move lots of bits to large amounts of eyeballs. And the ones that came to mind, of course, YouTube remains the 14,000 pound gorilla in the room, and we will continue to distribute content there. Facebook was the obvious second choice. That's where we have the largest amount of other followers. And then we started looking at others. Full 30 right now, actually it's getting less views than ever. I'm not sure what's going on there. We continue to publish there. And VidMe was asked for by a gazillion people. VidMe, go to vidme.com, do vidme.com. And I finally got verified and started publishing content on vidme.com. And views on vidme.com from InRange right now are getting like 5 views over a week. So I'll continue to publish content there because people asked for it, and it's another place for us to have as a backup should we need it. But it, at this moment, is kind of a waste of time. So in regards to gun websites, yes, we are familiar with him. We know him. I'm not familiar with his site maybe as well as you are. We'll look into it. Sean S. Are there any additional areas that you, as Patreon supporters, can assist InRangeTV beyond those of just sharing videos and financial support? Wish list stuff, something like Ian and I want a pilot to fly us around so we don't have to deal with the TSA when going to exotic locations. Well, I don't know. You know, I would actually let you guys bring that to the table. I can't fathom what that would be. Obviously, a pilot would be fantastic. Getting to locations cheaper and easier and being able to travel with firearms easier would be wonderful. That would be very useful. We're going to St. George, Utah in a couple weeks to shoot the hardest L2 gun, and we're driving, and that's a long haul. If we were able to do that in a plane, it'd be a lot quicker, but that's not something available to us, at least not cost effectively. So I'd leave that up to you guys. Now, people willing to loan us firearms to do stuff, mud tests, sand tests, competitions, that's huge. We can't buy all this stuff. There's no possible way, and I don't think InRange is aligned well to get lots of freebies from lots of different providers. Now, sometimes we get some stuff, sometimes we don't, and we let you know when we do, but the reality is people providing us gear to be able to use it and compete with it and practice with it and or review it is another huge benefit. And we get those kind of messages and emails quite regularly, and for that we're thankful. James K. Obviously you two are the shakers and movers of the program, but is there anyone in the background? Do you have any other people who help you with editing, filming, logistics, snacks, etc.? Nope. Nobody. It's us. Just the two of us. Myself and Ian. We record, we video, we do the audio, we do the editing, we do the uploading, we do all of the social media on everything you see. Every bit of it. I do the predominant amount on InRange, probably 90%, and I help a little bit here and there with Forgotten Weapons. And Ian does, of course, 90% plus of Forgotten Weapons, and a little bit that I help with out there once in a while, but there are no other background support mechanisms. It's us, entirely us, only us, with whatever we can make do with the resources we have. Alright, we'll go on to a more general questions, general Q&A. Eamon, what is your all-time favorite handgun? Not which was the most practical or the one that had the greatest impact on the market, but your favorite to shoot or you generally just enjoy. Keep up the good work, and I hope that the break from YouTube works out for you guys. Well, we're not breaking from YouTube, we're just demonetizing from YouTube. Different, but I hope it works out for us as well. Honest answer to this, actually, is this gun right here hanging on the wall. It is a 1860 Richard Mason conversion. It's a replica, of course, by Uberti. So what that is in the 1860 Colt was a cap and ball percussion gun. So cap, powder, ball, blah, blah, blah. And they, in the 1870s, started converting them to cartridges. using what was called the Richard Mason conversions type 1, type 2. They would shave the cylinder, they would put a piece of a conversion plate in that had a loading gate, they would bore out the cylinder so it could take cartridges, and converted it to 44 Henry rimfire. That gun balances wonderfully. I love it. I like it better than the single action Army of 1873. I think the gun handles better and shoots better, even though it's potentially, of course, not as strong. The Uberti replica is chambered in 45 Colt, although I shoot 44 Henry simulant cartridges out of it for the same feel, recoil, etc. ballistics. So that's my answer. The 1870-ish Richard Mason conversion, or the 1871 Colt open top, which was when they started making them specifically as cartridge revolvers instead of conversions. But those would be my favorites, no doubt. Mitchell C. Hi Karl, I have recently been considering entering the realm of antique handgun collecting, 1900 and 1950. I'm big on the history of world wars. The Luger and the C96 are the two common options for an entry-level collector as myself. Given how similarly they are priced, what is the best option for a newbie? What are the limitations of each system? What makes one more practical? And most importantly, which one's more fun to shoot? Thank you for all the work you and Ian put into the project. Well, you specifically mentioned the Luger and the C96, so I'm going to stick to those two because there's such a wide variety of things you could be looking at. Between the two, the Luger is the obvious choice. The C96 Mauser, as interesting as a pistol as it is mechanically speaking, it's a nightmare of a gun. There's very little good to say about it. The only thing good about it is that it's an early gun from 1896. It actually works. However, the lock, timing, mechanism, disassembly, reassembly, getting it to work reliably, the bolt stop tends to fracture and break over time, which is a dangerous condition if you don't keep an eye on it. Firing it one-handed as a pistol absolutely stinks. It's horrible handling. The stripper clip feeding is bad. It works pretty well when it's on a stock, but then you got to start worrying about NFA and reproduction stock and all the nonsense that goes on with that. I would absolutely guide you towards, between those two, a Luger. You will have far more fun with it. It will tend to be more reliable. It's more modern in terms of how you handle it. Of course, being magazine fed instead of stripper clip fed, shoots way better, balances way better, is more accurate, etc., etc., etc. Between the two, the Luger is definitively, hands down, the better of the two. And if you're going to spend your money on one of the two, don't bother with the C96. If you want the C96, get it because it's a curiosity, and expect it to be a curiosity. Do not expect it to be fun to shoot. Quite honestly, whether it's chambered in 7.63 Mauser, 30 Mauser, or 9mm doesn't even matter. Go for the Luger. Michael B. How to reload a handgun with a heel magazine release one-handed. Also, what does it mean to shoot offhand? Is that your non-dominant hand? We get that a lot, actually. No. First of all, let me answer the second part of the question first. Offhand means strictly offhand. So when you're shooting a rifle, standing, offhand. No support mechanism. So if you were standing and rested the rifle on a wall, that would be no longer really offhand, although we call that offhand as well. Offhand means standing and shooting. Standing and shooting. Standing and shooting. That's offhand. If we want to require someone to shoot non-dominant side, we will tell them to shoot with their non-dominant hand. So offhand essentially just means standing and shooting. How would you reload a handgun with a heel release one-handed? Well, that kind of is a problem, isn't it? And I think the heel release is fine, although by modern standards is probably a little bit obsolescent. What you would need to do, if you could catch it on something, you could. That's probably not the best action. I think the reality is you're going to put the gun between your knees, you're going to use the hand that you have available to you, pull open the heel release, pull the magazine out, insert a magazine, and then run the action on something, whether it would to be on a table or on your belt, something like you would do with modern handgun manipulations one-handed. But to get the magazine out, I pretty much think you're going to put it between your knees to do that, which of course is a huge deficiency when compared to a standard more modern or more American magazine release, or even the German little lever like you see on the HKP7. So that's a challenging problem, and I don't think at the time, I don't think people that are using heel releases going back into history were worried about that so much. XJ. Given the drawbacks of bullpups which you've noted, and in light of France and New Zealand's recent decisions to switch from the FAMAS and AUG to an AR-type platform, what do you see as the future of bullpups in infantry weapons? Wow. There's been lots of experimentation over time with infantry trying to go to the bullpup. The bullpup has this alluring quality of being a long barrel and a short action. Now, of course, the opposite of that is the Israelis are using the Tavor. So they went to the Tavor, although they also still use ARs as well. I'll tell you, the more I shoot bullpups, the more I wonder why. I just don't see it. I think maybe something could change. Maybe something that would be like electrically fired primers or something would change that might change the whole thing around a little bit. But the reality is they just don't handle well. They are slower to deal with. They are not as balanced. They do balance well off when you're shooting it one-handed, but that's such a unique scenario or situation to have to deal with. The overall length is a nice benefit, but the benefit doesn't justify the detriments that come with the strange machinations you have to deal with when dealing with a bullpup. So I suspect that I don't think we'll see a lot of bullpups in infantry weapons unless there's a specific niche reason for it. The AR really still reigns supreme. I know people don't want to hear that, but it does. It's just great. It works well, and I think putting a little effort into making the AR an even better platform would have more merit than trying to develop another bullpup. So, and like you said, the FAMAS and the AUG kind of going to the wayside for ARs, and I think there's a reason for that. Israelis have a reason for the Tavor, which is a little different. They are in very urban environments, but even then, I'm not sure. Miguel R. I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently there's a derogatory term for those who shoot old or weird guns. By I mean they call them gun hipsters. Have either of you ever been called that? What do you think of the mindset that old guns don't have anything to teach a modern shooter? We get called everything on the internet. I don't know if I do more than Ian probably do. We get called everything. Gun hipster is definitely one of them. I don't care. The internet's going to be that way. That's the peanut gallery. People who generally don't have a lot to say or do with themselves tend to use those machinations and mechanisms to defend themselves psychologically. So throwing words and names around like that they think are derogatory slurs does not elevate the conversation. All it does is paint a picture of the kind of person making the comment. However, do I think that old guns don't have anything to teach a modern shooter? No, absolutely not. I think old guns have a lot to teach a modern shooter. I think that if you diversify and shoot only old guns all the time, you're losing out. You're not going to become as good a shooter as you could be should you train very heavily with a modern gun, such as an AR-15 or an AK. So I would say that you do not want to train with old guns to the deficit of getting your skill set up with modern guns. However, using older guns absolutely teaches a lot of things about proper shooting. Some of these guns require more follow-through. Some of them mean that you have to get a first shot hit, unlike what you have to do with, intermediate cartridges and 30-round magazines where you can kind of just bring the bullets in should you miss. Being able to deal with recoil and recoil mitigation. Dealing with heavier guns, that's just a strength issue. Dealing with bad triggers. All those things, if you do enough of it, will make you better with a modern gun. When you pick up the AR, it just feels like a laser gun. You're like, this is amazing. I can't believe how capable this gun is. And it makes you appreciate what the modern firearms technology brings to the table that the old guns didn't. And it lets you put things into light. You start to realize, okay, these old guns, while they're cool and could be used, their days are kind of over with. And the modern guns bring so much more to that plate. People that shoot only old guns start to think, oh, these are good enough. They're as good as the modern guns, and it's not true. So I would say a good balance is great. Having an appreciation for the past is fantastic. Using the old guns as a teaching tool and learning to shoot them well will help you shoot modern guns well, as long as you also continue to shoot and train at least an equivalent level with the modern guns. Beau H, MG42 in 308 or the M60? Oh, this is easy. The MG42 in 308. The M60 was an absolute dumpster fire of a gun. There was a lot of things done to make the M60 better, and they tried to fix a lot of problems with it. The reality is the M60 was never really that great a machine gun. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that use them effectively, and I'm not saying that they were incapable, but the M60 really brought a lot of problems to the table and did not improve that much on what they were trying to do there. So I would say the MG42 in 308, which of course some countries did do that, the MG3 for example. I think you do want to decelerate the rate of fire. The MG42 had too high a rate of fire to be really practically usable, and the ammo resupply is insane, as well as the barrel overheating problems. So if you were to decelerate the MG42 into an MG3 format in 308, I think that's the better machine gun. Casey. Seems boring, but I'd like to see you two do a match with high-speed, low-drag competition ARs. Also, any plans of doing videos with other YouTubers? Matt from Demo Ranch is getting into 3-gun, and I think having him do one of your 2-gun matches would be great. Seems like he'd be interested in your style. First of all, we have done matches with high-speed, low-drag AR-15s on the channel occasionally. Maybe you just haven't seen them. That being said, the What Would Stoner Do project's going to make us do a lot more of that. A couple weeks from now, we're going to be doing the hardest L2 gun. Ian's going to be running his DMR, what would Stoner do gun, and I'm running my door kicker, 14.5 inch, what would Stoner do gun. And so, your wish shall be granted. You're going to see a lot more of high-speed, low-drag AR-15 matches coming out of InRange, specifically with those two AR-15 variants. In plans of doing other videos with other YouTubers, I don't know. You know, the other YouTubers don't communicate with us, and I guess we don't communicate with them. We've been in a little bit of communication with Matthias from CNR to do something there that's going to be a collab on a specific research project. That might come true. Never had any communication with Matt. Never had much communication with many other YouTube channels whatsoever. I have been doing some podcasting stuff, and I was recently on Primary and Secondary, which, boy, let me recommend them. That is a no BS excellent channel of real world people on all walks of life. So Primary and Secondary is a big thumbs up, and I really enjoyed being on their modcast, and I think we'll be doing more with them. In terms of collabs like matches and stuff, we're open to it. If Matt wants to come out and shoot 2-gun ACM or 2-gun action challenge match, I'd love to have him. So consider that an invite, and if other YouTube channels want to do something with us, time and cost and price and travel constraints considered, please reach out to us. We'd be glad to listen to you, or at least consider the idea. It'd be very cool. Scott S. Karl, that 8mm Berthier cartridge that you used in the Set Miel, did you insert it case head towards the muzzle or case mouth towards the muzzle? I put case head towards the muzzle. So the case mouth went into the, here's the stock, the butt stock, here's the rear of the stock, the 8mm label case went like this, the case head is here, the spring went on the case head, and the case mouth kind of got wedged and stuck in the plastic or the polymer of the rear of the Set Miel butt stock. So case mouth, rear, case head, towards the front of the gun, and then the spring assembly onto the case head. Worked great. Continues to work great. I leave it that way. Kyle I. Karl, what got you into the more tactical side of things when it comes to shooting, since you primarily had a competitive target shooting background? And when it comes to training, why is it now considered so important to seek training such as someone like Pat McNamara or something like it? Alright, I got into the more tactical side of shooting because, quite honestly, I got bored with the competitive target shooting. There's only so many holes you can put into a round black circle over time before it starts to get a little dull. Now, some people live for it and they continue to do it forever, and that's all they're interested in. There's definitely a discipline and art and skill set to be derived from that level of target shooting. People become incredible, amazing target shooters with incredible scores. It is a very OCD sport. When it comes to the target shooting, I think I spent more time, well, I definitely spent significantly more time reloading my ammunition and being very crazily OCD about the ogive length and the bullet seating depth and the crimp, how much crimp pressure there was, and the powder charge being to the 10th, and all this stuff that you had to do. Some of it you don't have to do, but some of it you felt like you had to do for the rubber chicken element to have faith in your gear when you're out on the line. And throwing a 9 instead of a 10 was an incredibly upsetting experience when you were trying to get leg points. And I found it to become so stressful that it was no longer fun. And if it's not fun, it becomes work. You have to question why you're doing it. Now, if people are out there find that to continue to be fun, and they like that level of intensity in terms of every shot counting, for lack of a better term, I think that's great, and it does propel technology, ammunition, marksmanship to another level, and the Army Marksmanship Unit proves that regularly, as does the Marine Corps Rifle Team, etc. And I still do that occasionally, but it's been a while since I've shot a real across the course NRA high power course, and I just flat burned out on it. It's too stressful. It became not fun, and I moved into the quote-unquote tactical side because it's more interesting, it's more practically applicable to me, and it also plays into things like I can do stuff that I could never do before, like shoot a 2-gun match with an 1866 Winchester and a Colt. You're not doing that in an NRA service high-power match. You are shooting your AR-15 that weighs 16 to 18 pounds. You are loading lots of extremely lovingly cared-for ammunition. You're traveling to do it. You're firing anywhere between 50 to 80 rounds for an entire day. I'm talking about from 6 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. 80 rounds would be a high round count. A lot of them are 50. And you are stressed the whole time. And half the time you're at the range lands up being in the pits, pulling targets and scoring stuff. So that's cool. It's great. It's an absolutely incredible discipline that builds incredible skill sets. But I just got burned out. Why is it important to seek training? Well, that's huge. It's incredibly important to seek training. You will not become better without training. This idea that I don't think anyone goes out in their front yard and thinks that they can start doing karate and becoming a karate master without working and sparring against other karate masters. I'm just using that as an example, but if you think you can, more power to you, but I don't think that's realistic. I think training from someone who knows more than you and them being able to give you oversight and teach you what you should be doing to do it properly from the lessons that they've learned is hugely important. And getting a diversity of training from more than just one trainer. McNamara is of course fantastic, but there are others. Going around and getting training from lots of different diverse trainers allows you to have a perspective you would not have otherwise, and it allows you to pick up skills and skill sets that you wouldn't otherwise. You can get some of it through osmosis by going to certain types of practical matches like 3-gun or 2-gun, but you'll never... You can also pick up bad habits there as well, and the training environment is where you are there for the specific and implicit reason of becoming a better, more skilled shooter and user of your gear, and that level of focus and discipline is required to excel and to become truly capable with firearms. I am a huge proponent of training. Whether or not you want to be a training junkie or not, it's up to you, but at least getting a subset or a minimal set of training for safety and proficiency for a practical shooting environment is, in my opinion, a requisite thing to do if we want to consider ourselves a well-regulated militia of responsibly trained firearms owning Americans. So push the idea that everyone should pursue that heavily. Jonathon H, I love your Old West vignettes, and I was hoping that you could expand that idea to doing analysis of other important shootings, such as the Platt and Maddox shootings in Miami. That's the infamous 1986 FBI shootout, Newtown shootout, Kent State shootings, Hollywood shootout, amongst many others. Perhaps as part of the analysis, you could think about what could have changed the events in a different direction. It'd be really interesting to hear your take on some of these events from a technical point of view and from a tactical point of view. Yep, I agree, and it's something I've been wanting to do, and we will do it sometime. I've actually got some stuff that I was working on that I've been... wow, it's been sitting in my editing folder for a long time. I got something about Columbus, New Mexico, which I guess is kind of an Old West vignette. I've got some stuff about Katrina and the horrible stuff that went on in New Orleans. Platt and Maddox would be awesome. What would be best would be to go on site and do it from location. That costs a lot of money and a lot of work for what will probably not get a lot of views, as we've said. However, with our new mechanism of being viewer supported, depending on how Patreon support continues to go, that may become more of a reality. So let's see. Let's keep an eye on our new mechanism of being entirely viewer supported, and if that starts to become viable, I think you'll see some of that, and I would love to do it. That would be a really cool series of videos.